My adoptive family, the Martins, took me in when I was just a baby. But instead of warmth and love, their eyes held a coldness that over the years became all too familiar. The family gatherings were the worst. Cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, they'd all gather around, laughing, joking, sharing stories of their day. Me? I was always the outsider. The kid who was too quiet, too withdrawn, too different. "Alex, pass the potatoes," Mr. Martin would command, not a trace of affection in his voice. It was always orders, never requests. I was not his son, but a servant, a responsibility thrust upon him that he never really wanted. Mrs. Martin wasn't much better. If anything, she was worse. Always pointing out my flaws, belittling my achievements. I'd come home with a B on a math test and she'd scoff. "Why isn't it an A? Jessica's son always gets A's." Their daughter, Emily, was no different. She was the golden child, the biological heir, the one who could do no wrong. I was just Alex, the adoptee, the charity case, the unwanted burden. One evening, after another day of cold shoulders and harsh words, I found myself standing outside their closed bedroom door. I had come to apologize for dropping Emily's favorite vase. I was always apologizing, always trying to earn their love, their approval. "We never wanted him," Mr. Martin's voice echoed through the wooden door, his words like icy daggers through my heart. He was never part of the plan. A choking sound, a sob escaped Mrs. Martin. But we had no choice, remember? We had to take him in, for the sake of appearances. Appearances. That was all I was to them. A prop. A means to an end. The reality of it hit me like a ton of bricks, my knees buckling under the weight of their harsh truths. I was unwanted. I was a burden. And they never wanted me. As I stumbled away from their door, my heart heavy and my eyes stinging, I swore to myself that things would change. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I wouldn't always be the unwanted child. I wouldn't always be the burden. I was Alex, and I would find my place in this world, with or without the Martins. Not long after overhearing their cruel words, I found myself in another heated argument. It was something trivial, something about chores or grades, but it quickly escalated. "Is this how your real parents raised you?" Mrs. Martin spat, her eyes full of contempt. "Real parents," I echoed, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. "Your biological parents," Mr. Martin clarified, his tone slightly softer, but the damage was done. "Biological parents," I repeated, the words foreign on my tongue. "You mean My mind spun. I had always known I was adopted, but the reality of it, the implications of having another set of parents out there, had never truly hit me. Until now. Mrs. Martin's eyes widened, and I could see a flicker of regret. "We shouldn't have," she started, but I didn't let her finish. With a fury I had never known, I stormed out of the room, out of the house, my mind a whirlwind of confusion, betrayal, and a strange spark of hope. If I had other parents, real parents, did that mean I could have a real home? A place where I belonged? Days turned into weeks as I dove headfirst into my search. The Martins refused to give me any more information, their guilt transforming into resentment. I was alone in my quest, a teenager trying to uncover a past that was deliberately hidden from him. I spent hours in the library, online, going through public records, old newspapers, anything that could give me a clue. I hit dead ends over and over, my initial spark of hope dwindling with each passing day. One evening, as I sat hunched over an old newspaper in the library, my eyes caught a small article tucked away in the corner of the page. It was about a presidential campaign 20 years ago. The candidate and his wife had taken a break from their campaign for personal reasons. My heart pounded as I read the next line. The couple had a baby. A baby they had given up for adoption. The dates matched up. Could it be? My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the grainy photo of the couple, the would-be president and his wife. The woman had my eyes. The man, my jawline. A spark of hope ignited in my chest. This was it. This was my lead. This was my beginning. The newspaper article was my compass, guiding me towards a truth that had been hidden from me for far too long. I scoured the internet, read every article, every snippet about the presidential couple, and their philanthropic activities. Late one night, as the Martins slept soundly, I found myself rummaging through their old belongings stashed away in the attic. Amidst the dust and cobwebs, I found an old box labeled Private. Inside it, under layers of old bills and forgotten documents, was a letter. A letter addressed to the Martins from my biological mother. Her name was etched on the paper, her title as a former president of the country following it. The words that flowed from her pen spoke of guilt, of sacrifice, of a love for a child she had never seen grow. She spoke of my father, a man renowned for his philanthropic activities, a man who shared her pain of giving up their only child. The letter ended with a promise to return for me when the time was right. As I read those words, my heart pounded in my chest. Was the time now? Would they come for me? My questions were answered sooner than I expected. A few days later, a convoy of sleek, black cars pulled up outside our modest house. Men in suits emerged, followed by a couple that I had only seen in pictures and on TV screens. My heart pounded as they walked towards me, my mind screaming that these were my parents, the ones who gave me up, but also the ones who promised to return. Before I could take a step, the Martins intervened, their faces a mix of shock, resentment, and, strangely, fear. Their words were sharp, their accusations wild. They painted my biological parents as villains, as selfish people who abandoned their child. The confrontation was heated, words were thrown around, old wounds were reopened. I stood in the middle of it all, torn between the family that raised me and the family that gave me life. The feeling of being unwanted came rushing back, but this time, it was accompanied by a glimmer of hope. A hope that I could finally belong somewhere, with someone. The confrontation at my doorstep was just the beginning of a much bigger storm. The Martins, despite their resentment towards me, refused to give me up without a fight. A legal battle ensued, with accusations and defenses flying from both sides. 16 years, Mr. Martin would argue, his voice filled with bitterness and frustration. We raised him for 16 years. Despite their coldness, their belittlement, I couldn't just dismiss the Martins. They were all I had known for most of my life. But then, there were my biological parents, the couple who looked at me not with resentment, but with longing and regret. They invited me to stay with them, to experience the life I should have had. But the Martins were adamant. They whisked me away before I could even consider the invitation, their hold on me tighter than ever. As the legal battle raged on, it caught the attention of the media. My life, my story, was suddenly under the spotlight. The headlines screaming about the presidential child and the custody battle. With the media scrutiny, secrets began to surface. Dark secrets about the Martins that shook my already fragile trust in them. Stories of fraud, of deceit, of a hidden agenda behind my adoption. The revelations were like a punch to my gut, leaving me reeling, questioning everything I had ever known. In the midst of this, I also learned about the controversy surrounding my birth. My biological parents' decision to give me up wasn't just a personal sacrifice. It was a political move. A sacrifice they had to make to save their careers, their reputation. The revelations left me torn. confused. The family that raised me was not what they seemed. Their love and care masked by deceit. And the family that gave me life, they too had their reasons, their secrets. I was caught in a whirlwind of lies and half-truths, my world spinning out of control. The decision was mine to make, a burden I had never asked for. The media, the public, the two families, they all had their opinions, their demands. But at the end of the day, it was my life, my choice. Just when I thought I had made up my mind, another revelation came to light. A secret from my biological parents that shook me to my core. They had known about the Martins' deceit, their hidden agenda, yet they did nothing. Their silence, their indifference hurt more than any of the Martins' harsh words. The court decided in favor of my biological parents, their power and influence tipping the scales. But they left the final choice to me. I was torn, confused, lost. I retreated, needing time and space to make the biggest decision of my life. But that time was stolen from me. As I stepped out of the courtroom, an unknown assailant grabbed me, pulling me into a van before I could react. The world blurred as I struggled, my mind spinning, my heart pounding. My survival instinct kicked in, and I managed to escape, my fear fueling my strength. I found myself on the run, the city a maze of narrow alleys and crowded streets. As I navigated my way through, I stumbled upon a shocking truth. The Martins had arranged the kidnapping. They were willing to go to any lengths to keep me from choosing my biological parents. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow, but it strengthened my resolve. I couldn't let them control my life, manipulate my choices any longer. The hero's journey is never easy, never straightforward. Mine was no different. But as I emerged from the ordeal, I found a strength within me I didn't know I possessed. I had been the unwanted child, the burden, the pawn in a twisted game, but no more. I was Alex, and I was ready to claim my life, my future. I confronted the Martins, my eyes meeting theirs with a newfound determination. They had tried to control my life, my choices, but no more. I chose to live with my biological parents, but I set conditions. I want to know you, I told my biological parents, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. I want to take it slow. They agreed, their eyes filled with relief and hope. A new chapter began for me that day, a chapter full of promise and potential, a chapter where I was not the unwanted child, but a son. A real son. The transition was not easy. My new life was a world away from the one I had known. The media attention, the public scrutiny, the challenges of navigating my newfound status, it was overwhelming. But I wasn't alone. I had my biological parents by my side, guiding me, supporting me. As this story ends, I stand not just as the president's son, but as Alex. A young man who had faced the odds, who had been belittled and mistrusted, but who stood strong nonetheless. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, ready to face the challenges, the adventures, the joys and sorrows that life would throw my way. I had started as the unwanted child, the burden. But as I stood in the presidential limelight, I realized I was so much more. I was a survivor, a fighter, a son. I was Alex. I was ready for whatever came next.